What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the man, the myth, the legend himself, RizGod, Riz God, baby, bringing you the 15th episode of the one and only RizPod, baby. So glad to be back. It's been a little bit. It's been a couple weeks. Last time you heard from me, we were talking some MLB baseball. And on the 15th episode this week, we're talking about NBA draft. We're talking about the NBA offseason, the best reality TV show in television, and that is the NBA. But before we get into not only the NBA draft, the NBA offseason, we got to introduce this week's guest. And it's somebody that you've seen here before, a familiar face to the podcast, my best friend, my boy, Mitchell. Mitchell, what's going on, buddy?
What's up? I didn't think I was going to be invited back because last time I was talking about Joker should have been the MVP. The Denver Nuggets were going to make some noise, and that happened, and I haven't had an invite since. So I thought you might have been a little upset that I had to show you up on your own podcast, but here we are. So thanks for having me back.
No, absolutely. I'm so glad for you to come back, and I will admit you were right. I think going back on that podcast when we were all making our takes and our picks of what to expect, talking about the second half season or the first season awards, I was looking back and I was one of them. Listen, Joker's one of my favorite players, and I love the guy, but they flopped every single season of his career, but they finally got the pieces together. A lot of guys stepped up, and he had a great postseason run to win his first Finals MVP and his first championship. Kind of just before we go into the draft, I kind of want for you to touch up on it a little bit. Do you feel like it was a well-deserved win? Do you think it was a dominant performance? Are you happy with the outcome? Like, what's your overall take?
Yeah, I mean, as a Warriors fan, I can't say like I'm happy with the outcome because I really thought that the Warriors could have made some noise, but it wasn't meant to be this season. But yeah, like I'm stoked. Like I'm a Kentucky fan, so Jamal Murray balling out, Joker every game. Like I mean, we talked throughout the playoffs, and I think like his worst game in the playoffs was like 19-7-5, and that's like a pretty solid game for pretty much anyone else. So yeah, it was dominant. From the first series on, like they looked like they should have been, hoisting the trophy at the end of the playoffs, and they did. So right team won. Miami was a really fun story, fun little Cinderella, but yeah, I'm glad that Joker got that first ring.
Yeah, I would say kind of on the same line of thinking of you. Like I'm so happy for Joker. Miami had a good Cinderella story. They obviously beat the two best teams in the East, and they beat my Knicks to get there. So people had faith in Jimmy Buckets. But realistically, I don't think I ever remember a time where one seed was so doubted throughout the entire playoff run. Like every single time they go against the Warriors or against the Suns, they're like, oh, KD and Booker are taking it. Against the Lakers, they're like, LeBron's washing them. And against the Heat, a lot of people, obviously the books in Vegas were favored in the Nuggets, but a lot of people was like, yeah, this is Jimmy's time. He's getting his ring. So it's funny to see how now that the Nuggets ended up winning, like all of NBA Twitter is like, oh, Mickey Mouse ring. They had the easiest road. They versed the 6th, 7th, and the 8th seed to win the chip. And I'm just like, bro, pick and choose what the fuck you guys
literally. Yeah. And even, I mean, the disrespect even continues, which I mean, we'll talk about some off-season stuff, but like they're still not the favorite to win next season even. So it's just crazy that, the lack of love that they get, but yeah. They deserve the win, and they'll keep on proving critics wrong. I'm sure they'll be awesome next season because I mean, as long as Joker's on your team, you have a chance to win the title. So
absolutely, and I think what's going to be fun is obviously just how the NBA always changes every single year, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about in the offseason because since the NBA Finals to today, which has probably only been about 2.5 weeks, a lot of movement and changes has happened, not only just about the NBA draft, but just trades and all that fun stuff. But before we really get into the trades, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people love, and that's the NBA draft. And what I will say about this year's NBA draft, I think it's to some people would be considered a little bit more boring than other drafts because I feel like in other drafts, there's a lot of where's this person going to go? Where's this person going to go? Oh my God, a lot of uncertainty with certain players, but I feel like we've had a consensus number one pick for the last 5 years, it feels like, with what we're going to discuss with the number one pick with the San Antonio Spurs, mind you, who haven't gotten a number one pick in over almost 25 years. But what I will say is when the San Antonio Spurs do get the number one pick, they hit a home run. And I wish my boy Adam was on the pod because he was jumping up and down for his San Antonio Spurs. But let's just kind of get it underway with the first overall pick. The San Antonio Spurs select Victor Wembanyama, guy out of France, 7'5" freak of nature, shoots one-legged threes, can fucking get a putback dunk after shooting a three. The guy's an absolute unicorn. Kind of, I don't know what more is there to say about this guy's game than, wow, he is like a created 2K player. Honestly, there is a lot of question marks, I feel like, for his game. But before I really give my take, I kind of want to see how you feel about Victor Wembanyama. Do you think he is this top-tier prospect, the biggest prospect since LeBron James? And that's saying something given what LeBron James has panned out to be. So kind of what's your takes on Wembanyama and the Spurs obviously taking him with the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, I mean, of course it was a no doubt. So like the Spurs, they never really had a choice to make here. It was always going to be Wemby. And if they ever passed on him, they'd be, lunatics. So, but yeah, I believe it. Like, I think like 2 years ago when he was really starting to get, put on the map a bit, you started hearing about this 7'4" kid out of France that, like you said, like shoots threes and controls the paint and just does everything. I had concerns, but I think, the more I think not even like watching the tape, because I've watched, a couple of his games and stuff. They've had him on ESPN and such, but like just getting to like see him in interviews and things like that. Like that's, I think, what makes me a believer in him. Like, I think he is so much more mature than like an 18 or 19 years old.
Right.
Like he's been planning for this. Like he knew he was going to be in the NBA for probably since he was like 12. I think he means business, and I think he's going to improve the Spurs. I think people are getting a little crazy with like, Wemby makes them like, if they get like Austin Reeves, they're going to be in the playoffs. It's like, okay, pump the brakes. But I think he's going to be like a difference maker immediately. How could he not be? I mean, his wingspan's like 8 foot long. Like
it's so funny that you say that, because literally a lot of it is like just meme Twitter, but a lot of people are like, is Wembanyama a top 25 player in the NBA right now? The guy hasn't even stepped foot on the court. And we're like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree. I think Wembanyama, for me, what I will say, I think, like you said, passing up on him is absolutely bonkers, even if he doesn't pan out. I think when I asked my buddy Adam, who's a big Spurs fan, I'm like, listen, like, what if he's a bust? Like, what if he's Greg Oden? Like, what if he's just injury prone, can't stay on the court, he's too skinny, all this stuff. And he's just like, listen, like, you can't pass up on someone like this. If he's a bum, screw it. Like, he's just that talented. And I think he said the same thing that you just pointed out. And I think it's so crucial and something to note, because look at the best players in the NBA right now. Not a lot of them are from the States. Giannis, Embiid, Luka, Jokic, they're all from overseas, and they all just have a different mindset compared to a lot of these younger players. And this is a common theme if you look at the draft. Like, look at all these American-born players, like Brandon Miller, Grady Dick, Anthony Black, all coming in with chains, big suits, like coming in looking blinged out for the social media and all this stuff. And like, you see Victor Wembanyama doing his like interview after he gets drafted, and then going on JJ Redick's podcast beforehand, he's just talking straight basketball, talking business. I want to do this. I have a goal for myself. Like, nothing is going to stop me. He is so much more mature for his age, and that's because he's playing with grown men since he was 16 and doesn't really live in the spotlight. And I just think him playing for Pop in San Antonio with that system, I do not buy the hype. I don't think he's going to be like a top 10 player in the next 3 years. I could be very wrong, but I think he's going to have a slow burn. But ultimately, I think he is the right pick here just for what he brings with his game. I mean, he models his game after Kevin Durant, and he's almost 6 inches taller than him. So, like, what can really go wrong?
Yeah, I think it's like, just talking about like, if he was a bust, right? Like, no team in this position wouldn't have taken him, right? So like, when you look a few years back, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago, when like the Cavs took Anthony Bennett, number 1,
right?
Like, everyone was like, what the hell are you doing taking Anthony Bennett? And he was a bust. So then you can look at the Cavs and be like, y'all are idiots. But like, if something happens with Wemby and he isn't the player that so many people think he is. Like, no one's going to fault the Spurs for that. No one's going to be like,
Right.
y'all are stupid for taking Victor Wembanyama, the most hyped prospect since LeBron, So, yeah, I mean, if we're going grades, it's an A+. I mean, there's nowhere else you could have went here with this, I think.
I'm going to give him a very calm and humble A. I can't give him an A+ just because I have someone else who I have an A+, and I only think there deserves to be one A+ when you rank something.
I agree. I only have one A+ as well, and it's
So, and my A+ is not going to Victor Wembanyama, but yeah, pretty simple. I'm very curious to see where Wemby stands this season and just kind of for his career. I'm going to see if he lives up to the hype, but I'm really excited. He's a unicorn. He's literally Porzingis, but like
good
20 times better. Yeah, I get. Well,
I'm kidding.
We'll get to Porzingis, but yeah. So there's kind of Wembanyama in the Spurs. Now, kind of shifting gears from someone overseas, we're going to go to the second overall pick with the Charlotte Hornets selecting Brandon Miller. And I think Brandon Miller, if based on normal NBA lore, a normal NBA draft, was the best player in college, is usually coming into being the number one pick in most drafts if it wasn't for Wembanyama. Obviously, there's another guy in this draft that was kind of 1A, 1B, and a lot of people were not happy with Brandon Miller going here to Charlotte. A lot of Charlotte Hornet fans as well. There's a lot of live parties or like watch parties on Twitter that were like overtly upset that they didn't get Scoot Henderson, but instead got Brandon Miller. What I will say is I am not too big of a fan in terms of Charlotte Hornets picking Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson, and we'll get to that. But I think obviously Brandon Miller being the best player in college last year and just his overall talent is something you can't miss, right? He long, lengthy, can shoot the three, has mid-range, can drive. He does have the wingspan and the capabilities to be a good defender in this league. And I think Charlotte just ultimately drafted Brandon Miller based on fit because obviously he's a wing player. They kind of didn't need a wing after the Miles Bridges incident happened and everything. And you have LaMelo Ball, who's the future of that team. And maybe going with Scoot Henderson maybe doesn't fit the mold of what Charlotte's trying to build. But I don't know. I think Brandon Miller is going to do well. Like, I think him and LaMelo Ball are a good partnership. And I think if you're drafting on fit, it's a good fit for Charlotte. I just think with the number 2 pick, if you're trying to build the future and get a superstar kind of player, I would have personally picked Scoot.
Yeah, I think – to echo kind of what you said, like I think Brandon Miller does a lot of things really well. Like I totally believe he's going to have a solid NBA career. He kind of, even though he kind of reminds me of this player, and I think he also said that this player is the greatest player of all time, which is maybe a little egotistical of Brandon Miller, but he's kind of like a little
Paul George,
a little poor man's Paul George, and maybe that could be his ceiling or something. But like you said, like Scoot Henderson's in this draft. And so if Scoot Henderson wasn't in this draft, this would probably get an A for me. But it brings it down to like a B for me just because that's how good I think Scoot Henderson is. And I think Brandon Miller is going to have a good career, but I don't think it'll match the ceiling that Scoot has.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I'm giving this a B, not because I don't have faith in Brandon Miller, but I really think when you look at his ceiling, I'm right there with you. It's like a Paul George, right? And then his floor, like a Harrison Barnes, like a good starter in this league, a good role player, someone that can play defense, someone that has, bounce, athletic, can shoot the three. I just think Brandon Miller, something about it, watching him in college. I mean, Alabama was the number 1 seed in the entire tournament, and they obviously flopped, but a lot of it came to Brandon Miller. Like, obviously, college defensive schemes in the NBA is so different, right? Like, they play zone. They're a lot more physical than the NBA. The NBA is a lot of ISO ball. Like, I think Brandon Miller would do good in the ISO. In college during the tournament, man, he shot terrible. Terrible. His shot selection was bad. And I don't know. He kind of gives me, like, looking at the interviews and everything, he's kind of like soft. Like, I don't even want to say it like to like emasculate him, but like,
his boy's Paul George. I mean, that's literally down to the DNA,
Right. And like, I look at someone like Scoot, who's telling everyone, I'm a dog. I belong in this league. I will kill you. Like, and then Brandon Miller's just like, I'm happy to be here. I mean, listen, Wembanyama was the same way. Like, I'm happy to be here, but like, he was determined that he was always going to be in the NBA. I just feel like Brandon Miller feels like he just deserves to be there. I don't know. I'm on the right track with you there. I'm going to give it a B just because Scoot Henderson's in this draft, and I think the Hornets played it safe and drafted for fit instead of the best player.
Yeah, and I think, even though I don't want to get like super into it because I don't know all the details and I'm not a lawyer and everything, but I think, his off the court issues were a problem at Alabama. And I know he's only 19 years old and there's plenty of times to right any of those ships. But I think that's kind of, cause of concern maybe too. You want to make sure that he's in a scenario and in the right situation where he can succeed and not be in, any more off the court issues. So I hope that the Hornets are the right organization for him. I think he'll have a fine career. I think it'll be a bit like, I don't think he's going to be an instant impact player. I think it'll take him a couple seasons, but yeah, it's a fine pick. It would have been a great pick if Scoot wasn't in the draft, but
I agree. And to kind of play devil's advocate on that point, if anything, Charlotte saw from college that he can assist the shooter. So, sorry, out of pocket. Anyways,
for that one.
Yeah, I kind of was. So, kind of get into the guy that we've been talking about already and kind of overshadowing Brandon Miller is the number 3 pick, which comes out of Portland, and they select Scoot Henderson, who, and I would say any other draft in probably the last 5 years would probably go number 1. Mm-hmm. And Scoot is someone I'm really excited to talk about because I'm a big fan of him. I think he is going to be special. He gives me Russell Westbrook vibes with a longer wingspan. He's just hungry, determined, freakishly athletic. He got a good mid-range. He's great on the ball. He's great ISO. He can play defense. The only weak point is obviously his jump shot, but in the NBA, you just got to develop it. Obviously, It's so crazy to say because if you look at the top 3 picks, all 3 of them have all had different paths to the NBA. Wembanyama overseas, Brandon Miller in college, and Scoot Henderson obviously going to the G League. So clearly, if you're good enough, you make it. And I think when we get to the 4th and 5th pick, that's another route that we'll talk about as well. But, I mean, what is there to miss with Scoot Henderson? Portland obviously has way too many guards. You got Damian Lillard, you got Anthony Simons, and you got Shaedon Sharpe, who they drafted last year. Now you get Scoot Henderson, way too much guard depth. I don't know how they're going to manage it. And obviously Damian Lillard has so many talks around him about being shipped out of Portland, wanting to go to a contender. And clearly Portland is really not have the roster construction to be a contender. So do they ship out Scoot Henderson? Do they ship out Simons? Do they ship out Shaedon Sharpe for Damian Lillard? Or do they ship out Damian Lillard? I don't know. But one thing I will say about Scoot Henderson is he was my A+ because I don't think you can go wrong with him. I think he's a must draft. He is not only the safest, but I just think has the highest impact, grade immediately in the NBA. I think he's going to come into the league and average a calm 18 points. I think obviously Wembanyama has the hype around him, but if I had to put my money on someone to win Rookie of the Year, it would be Scoot Henderson just because I think he will come in day one and just give buckets. And he's also just really exciting to watch, and I'm really excited to see what he can do.
So I have a question. So if you're an expansion team, all right there in Yonkers, y'all get your own team now.
Yeah.
And you have a blank roster. You could pick any player to start your team with. You're taking Scoot over Wemby.
It might look silly in 2 years from now, but yes, right now with not seeing either of them play, I'm going to go with Scoot.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I've loved Scoot. I don't think there's really a wrong answer there. I think getting a big man is a little bit more important, but yeah, Scoot's insane. He's just a freak athlete. It's kind of like Wemby. What's more to say about the guy?
Right.
Yeah, he can't shoot from outside. It's pretty bad, but I also think he's a gym rat, and I think he'll figure that out within his 3rd season of the NBA. I think we'll steadily see improvements in that shooting percentage the more he's there. I think Portland. My hope for Portland is that when Dame goes into the gym and plays around with Scoot a little bit, Dame's going to realize that, oh, wait, this kid's special. I want to be here. And then they can trade off, Simons or something like that. And and get another piece for Dame to kind of win now. But because I think, like you said, like I think Scoot can win now. Like I don't think he's because I know Dame, he like infamously said, like, I don't want another 19-year-old. He doesn't want to rebuild. I don't think Scoot's a rebuild. Like he's a franchise generational guard. And
I think he's an impact player now.
Yeah, I agree. I think him and Dame together would be so much fun. And I think Dame, if he bought into it, I think he would really have a lot of fun with it too. But yeah, Portland's at a little bit of a crossroads. I don't like. What would you do if would you get rid of Dame, or would you? Because you're not trading Scoot. Like Scoot's gonna
right.
So it's either Dame or you got to deal like a Simons.
I think for Portland, if I'm the front office, I have to make this crossroads decision. Right. If I want to rebuild, you ship out Dame. I think Scoot and Simons with a Shaedon Sharpe as your backcourt. I think that's perfect. That's great. You don't have to worry about it. That's your backcourt of the future. Simons is really developing into a great shooting guard, point guard, combination, combo guard. Dude averages like 22 points. I think he'll be great. Scoot will be great. My only fear is you keep Dame and try to build a contender. It's going to hinder Scoot's like overall potential to superstardom, I think, just because Dame is a high usage player. Simons is a high usage player. Like, Scoot, if you want him to be what we think he can be, like he needs volume, and I just don't think he's going to see it around Dame. I think he can impact them in a contender. He's just not going to be as good as what we expect early on. And if I'm being honest, I would ship out Dame to a Miami, to a New York, to a Brooklyn, to a team with a lot of assets, or a team willing to give a lot of assets, because you just build around. Because realistically, Portland doesn't have a roster constructed to win now. Like if Dame wants to win a chip, he's not winning it in Portland, even with Scoot. Like I love Scoot, but Dame, Scoot, Simons, a beat up Nurkic, and Jeremy Grant, I just don't think is going to do it. So if I'm Dame, thank you, Portland. I'm out of there. Let Scoot be Scoot here in Portland and be the new face of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just so hard, because I think in a trade, like when you're trading, I know we're talking more a little bit about Dame, but it goes in with the pick. So I think when you ship out someone like Dame, I feel like you're never really going to get the value back for him, like that. And that's what worries me for Portland. If they trade Dame, I want them to like get a dang good package so that they can really build around Scoot and, but I don't know. I just worried them trading him to Miami for like Lowry and like Hero, and that's it. And it's just like, that's not enough for Dame. It's just not.
And we'll get to it, but we've already seen it so far this offseason where some superstars or borderline top NBA players are getting traded for pennies and nickels. And then you look at last season, someone like Rudy Gobert, who just coughs up 5 first-round picks. I don't know. It's crazy, but I feel like kind of what you're saying, if Dame gets shopped, he's probably going to get shopped for like a good player like a Tyler Hero and maybe like a first-round pick in 2035 or something.
Right.
I don't know. Well, there's a lot to see, but I'm really excited for Scoot Henderson. He's my pick out of all these rookies to be the biggest or quickest impact player, and I'm really excited for what he's got to offer.
Yeah, and I think, this is where I think it's not a big drop-off, but I think everyone knew those top 3 players, right? I think everyone knew Wemby was going 1, and then 2 or 3 was either going to be Scoot and Miller or Miller and Scoot. It ended up being Miller and Scoot. So now it's like, okay, everyone was like, okay, where are we going here? So I think these next few picks are going to be fun to talk about. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the number 4 pick, the emerging Houston Rockets with all this young talent, all this salary cap, a new coach in Ime Udoka has the pick, and they ended up taking one of the Thompson twins and Amen Thompson from Overtime Elite. I want to hear your thoughts on just kind of maybe a men's game, and just kind of your thoughts on Overtime Elite, because like I alluded to previously, another route to the NBA, not college, not the G League, not overseas, but another, like, I like to say a glorified LA Fitness League, but maybe you have different takes on it. But what's your thoughts on Amen Thompson?
Yeah, I think, and this is going to be like a trait or a way to describe someone that I'm going to say a lot for this draft, because I think it's just true, but he's a freak athlete, and there's a lot of freak athletes in this draft, but he's got really good speed. He's explosive. Like, there's a lot of good things. However, can't really shoot either. You know, he's kind of like the slightly cheaper man, Scoot Henderson, I think. And like when I was doing my research, he shot 65% for the free throw line. Like that's terrible. Like if you're a guard, like you need to be shooting, in my opinion, at least 75 or in the 80s. But anyway, but you're right. Like Houston's going to be fun. I don't know. Like I think they're almost like an instant league pass team. They're going to be fun. They're not going to win a lot of games. I saw today that they're like maybe trying to get Fred VanVleet and Kyle Kuzma and all these. And I'm just like, why? So y'all get the 9 seed? Like it's insane. But they're going to be fun to watch. And as far as like the overtime elite, I think it's kind of like the NBA, right? For these past like 10 years, really ever since like LeBron went to Miami and then back to Cleveland and LA. It's like the player empowerment era. And I almost feel like that's like trickled down to like the 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. Like, I think it's kind of cool. Like now, like they can really like, kind of like choose what they want, right? Because, years ago, it was like you have to go to college. When they took away, you can even jump from the high school. And, sometimes college isn't for everybody. So I like that there's different avenues. Would I take someone from overtime elite over someone who played like SEC basketball or ACC basketball? Probably not. But I think it's good. I think it's good for the game that there are so many different ways for players to get recognized overall. But I do like this pick. I think he's going to be fun. I don't know. He needs to work on his jump shot and his shooting, but he'll be fun.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. What I will say for overtime elite as a league or just like as an ambassador of basketball, I think these Thompson twins are going to be critical to like that whole league because if they pan out and are actually good, this is huge for them. This is like moneymaker. People can go to them and like just build their game and go straight to the league. But if they don't pan out and they kind of suck, I think this is the last time we'll probably see something like this ever happen. Yeah. Maybe maybe a second rounder or a late first rounder, but a top 4 pick, like I don't see it happening much. Just to kind of go what you were saying, Amen Thompson, freak athlete, crazy bounce, like 6'11". Well, he's like 6'8", but like near almost 6'11" wingspan. He can jump out the gym. Great defender, can't shoot. And I think what's even worse, obviously 65% is 65%, but I feel like 65% in a glorified LA Fitness league is like 50% in college when there's like actual stakes and stuff involved. And the one thing I'll say in terms of my criticism is like, if you look at the talent that they're playing in overtime elite compared to like playing in, in college, overseas, they're playing against teenagers. Like, you know what I mean? Like obviously college has teenagers too, but most programs in college have sophomores, seniors, big established players. You're not playing teams full of freshmen. At overtime elite, you're playing a team full of 17-year-olds. So obviously when you're just so much more talented and gifted athletically, you're going to shine. I think though for Houston, this was the right fit. Amen Thompson, a lot of people are saying he's going to be the point guard of this team. And I think with Jalen Green, Alfred Şengün, Kenyon Martin Jr., like a lot of the guys they're building.
Jabari Smith.
That's right.
Jabari.
I was trying to remember him, but he had a pretty shit rookie year.
Yeah, but they're like they're going to be fun. Like it's going to be a fun, and they're young. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a really big Kevin Porter Jr. fan, so I hate to see that he's probably going to come off the bench. But I think he's even going to be like a fun guy off the bench to energize that second team. So. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun. Him and Jalen Green are going to be just insane together. They're going to shoot a combined like 20% from outside, but it's going to be so much fun.
Actually, I do have a different take. I think Jalen Green's going to actually be an all-star next year, and I'm really excited to see it.
Okay.
Yep, that's going to be my hot take on the RizPod. I think Jalen Green is really going to have his breakout season. He's slowly turning it around. He had like a skinny frame entering the league, but he's getting a little bit more built. I think he's going to be an all-star, especially with Udoka being there as a coach. I think they're going to get disciplined. Şengün is really good. And I think Amen Thompson is going to be pretty good as well. More so for his role. I don't think he's going to be a top player in this league. Like I would say for me, I can see him kind of like a Tony Allen, but obviously a little bit better. I think he's going to play his role well. Maybe that's kind of undermining his talents, but I don't know. I just see Amen Thompson and I look at Tony Allen. So I'm going to give this a B+. Not because I think he was a bad pick, but I think for what Houston needs, I think he fits perfect. And I think the talent is there and the potential is there. So why not?
Yeah, I have it a little bit higher just because I do kind of like the fit. I like what Houston's doing. So I have it as an A minus, so just one spot up. But yeah, I think he's going to be a pretty solid defender. I think he's going to fit in well there. And there's also, I don't think, any pressure because Jalen Green was like a top 3 pick before, and Jabari Smith was a top pick, so like the pressure's kind of off him a little bit, and maybe more so on those guys to make leaps to all-star games, as you said. So I think it's a really good scenario and situation that he's stepping into, unlike the next pick. So for me personally, so if you want to introduce that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what better way than to talk about the Detroit Pistons, who I like to consider probably the worst ran organization in the NBA at this current moment. And the Detroit Pistons, with their 5th overall pick, actually selected the other Thompson twin, Asar Thompson, with the 5th pick. I'm going to kind of let you take it away. I have some feelings about it as well. But yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so again, freak athlete. They're twins, so they're probably going to have similar frames as they do. He also shot 65% from the free throw line, mind you. So neither of them can score from the charity line. I think he has right. I think he has he has some good qualities about him for sure. Like he's also much like his brother, not a great scorer. I just hate the fit with the Pistons. Like I hate it so much. And I've read some things where it's like, yeah, he's going to go in nicely with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. I'm like, what? Like none of these guys are like
shooters,
terrific natural scorers. Right. It's like, so it's like, what are they just going to try to beat everyone 83-80 every game going forward? I don't understand the fit. There's a lot of other, you have the number 5 pick. There's a lot of other very talented players out there that can score the bucket. I don't understand this one. I like him. I think it would be a better fit if he was somewhere else. Like if he slipped one pick and went to Orlando, I wouldn't maybe mind that so much. But yeah, him in Detroit, I just don't fully get it. I think they maybe wanted to make history and have twins go back to back in the top 5 or something, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I think Detroit's kind of lost their marbles in a sense that it's just a place where all of high draft picks that don't pan out go. You see Wiseman there, you see Marvin Bagley there, you see a lot about these other guys. I think for Detroit, similar to what you're saying, I think the same hesitancies I have with his brother Amen, I have the same thing with him. The only thing that's worse is he's the worser of the two based on reports, right? He's not that talented when it comes to scoring the ball, offensively, creating your own shot. It says that he's better defensively. I don't really know. I can't grade off overtime elite defense, but they said he's got more potential defensively, but he's not a great all-around shooter. He's not a great all-around 3-level scorer. His brother's the better playmaker. And when you have Cade Cunningham, who we haven't really seen fully play, but, he's got the makeup to being a good player. Jaden Ivey, who had a pretty solid rookie year, but he's not known of a shooter either. What's the fit here? If I was Detroit personally, I would – if you want to go with a guard kind of player, I would have went with the guy that Orlando ended up taking, which we'll discuss. Go with someone that's a little bit more established as a guard, or go with a big man. I don't know. I just feel like a forward that doesn't provide spacing or – really much anything doesn't really add any value. And to me, like I said, he's a twin, so they're probably kind of similar in terms of a lot of their aspects, but I'm going to give this just a B-, not because I think he's not going to be a good player. I just, like you said, I don't see the good fit in Detroit, and I don't know what Detroit's doing, but maybe they know better than I do. They did get a new coach in Monty Williams. So maybe Monty Williams can coach those boys to, do something and make some noise in Detroit. But for me, Asar Thompson's getting a B- in Detroit.
Yeah, you're a tough guy because I admittedly don't like the pick either, but I gave him a B. So yeah, I think I'm always one above you. But I love Monty Williams, one of my absolute favorite coaches. But again, I don't understand why they gave him he's the highest paid coach I think in the NBA now.
Yeah,
it's
he is.
They're nowhere near competing. So I don't know. I don't know what Detroit's doing. I think they're trying to, maybe they've been reading The Secret that's a really niche reference for people, but maybe they're trying to manifest it. Like, hey, if we act like a team that wins 60 games, maybe we'll actually do it. I don't think they're anywhere close. But yeah, I give it a B. I think he'll be fine, but I just don't like the situation that he's going into.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat there. But a situation that I think a lot of people, when the pick was made, were a little confused, I would say, towards the casuals. But that was the 6th overall pick coming out of the Orlando Magic camp. And they chose the Arkansas guard, Anthony Black. So I'll kind of start it off. I was not too familiar with Anthony Black's game in a sense of just watching it in college basketball until the tournament. But I got to say, Orlando is a very interesting team because, like Houston, they have so much young talent that is starting to now pan out. They had the rookie of the year and number 1 overall pick in Ben Carroll last year. Franz Wagner from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Now he's been really balling. Then you got a lot of other players like Wendell Carter, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, like a whole bunch of lottery picks that just haven't made any noise yet. But I think with the 6th and the 11th pick, Orlando is trying to make a push to make the playoffs here. And I can see it. And I think Anthony Black was a great pick. I think he's a great big guard who's fast. He can score. He can play defense. He can do it on both sides of the ball. The only thing is obviously he isn't a great shooter. But a lot of people are saying on the combine that in terms of just the spacing of the NBA, he's done a lot better than what he shot in college. So I'm really excited to see that. We'll kind of talk about Orlando's needs on the 11th pick because I think that's where I have a little bit more of a problem with Orlando. But they need scoring, and they need scoring from shooting the ball. Franz Wagner's a pretty solid scorer in terms of shooting the ball, but Suggs can't shoot. Cole Anthony's really not a shooter. Ben Carroll, for God knows, we know can't shoot the 3 efficiently. So I like the pick here in Anthony Black. Obviously, with them picking this, Jalen Suggs or Cole Anthony is going to get shipped out. I don't know who it is, but there's no way they're going to have 3 guards on this team, especially with Franz Wagner and Pancaro both being ball handlers for them as well. I actually really like the pick, to be honest. I'm going to give it an A- just because I really like Anthony Black. I think he can be a top 5 player in the draft class, just because I just think he's got that good mentality. He's got a good build for him, and I think he's actually going to be a good playmaker for this team.
Yeah, I like it as well. He's got great size. I mean, he's measured at 6'7", which is just huge for a point guard. I've seen some comparisons to Josh Giddey. I don't know if he can get there because Josh Giddey is just so much fun to watch. But I do get it. Like he as a Kentucky fan, I did. We played against Arkansas. Pretty sure he torched us for like 19 points. But he's a good facilitator. He's a good point guard. I like him a lot. Like you said, like a lot of people were like scratching their heads a bit because of the amount of guards they have. Because there's one more that you left off, Markelle Fultz,
exactly,
who really has had like a really nice,
comeback
there
story
in Orlando. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I like it. I like him next to Franz. And of course, Paulo's, outstanding as well. I like the pick. I gave it a B+, I think. Only because they do have so many guards and maybe there is other things that they could have addressed, but I like him. I like I said, I watched him up close quite a few times this year in the SEC. And I think he's going to bring a really solid energy to Orlando. And I think it's kind of going to be a little bit what they need. Like, Cole Anthony's solid. Markelle Fultz is solid. Jalen Suggs has been disappointing, but I think Anthony Black could end up being the point guard that Orlando needs, especially next to their stars and
Franz and Paulo.
Wagner and Paulo. Yeah.
And what I will say really quickly, I didn't talk about it. He kind of gives me like Lonzo Ball vibes in a sense when Lonzo's obviously healthy and he can walk and play basketball. But I think big size, great basketball IQ, good facilitator, and can do it on both sides of the ball. And obviously Lonzo's rookie year wasn't a great shooter, but slowly developed into actually fixing his jumper, being a good shooter. And I can see that trajectory for Anthony Black, which I think would be perfect for Orlando. And I'm really excited for him to see what he's got.
Yeah, that's a good comparison because I think a lot of people for some reason, just always I consider Lonzo kind of a joke, mainly because of his dad and because he wasn't great in LA. But once he got out of LA, like he was a pretty dang good player, and I think that'd be a great, player comparison for Anthony Black, and especially if he can get there, that'd be perfect for Orlando. So I liked as similar to you, which will a little foreshadowing. I really liked their first pick in the lottery.
Yeah, I agree. But speaking about head scratchers, we're going to go with the 7th overall pick, which was made by Indiana but traded to Washington, who is the teammate of the number 1 overall pick, Victor Wembanyama. The Washington Wizards ended up acquiring Bilal Koulibaly out of France, the young 18-year-old, very raw prospect. Mitch, kind of take it away because I want to really hear your thoughts because, listen, we've been giving high praise to a lot of players overseas. Look at the last few years and Luka and all these guys. Do you think this is a good pick for Washington?
Okay, so we might differ on this because I love this pick. So I'm going to say about 3 weeks ago, I'm going to talk about a competitor here, Bill Simmons. I don't think he knows about this podcast yet, but he will one day. But Bill Simmons, about 3 weeks ago, mentioned Bilal and was like, this kid is crazy, freak athlete. Like, just go watch his clips. So like a good listener, I went and watched his YouTube clips. And yeah, like the dude just got bounce. He's fun. He's a great finisher. He's super lengthy. Probably needs to put on some muscle, kind of like his teammate Wemby. But I think if he could like put it on, like he's super raw. He is super, super raw. But I think if he can put it together, like he's one of the more intriguing players. I think Washington honestly is like the perfect fit for him because they're clearly in rebuild mode. They're not trying to win anything. So they have as much time as Bilal needs to develop. They have it. There's no pressure on him to go out and perform like Scoot does or to perform like the Thompson twin. There's none. There's no pressure. So
plus he's 18.
Yeah, he's so young. Like I don't know. When we look back on this draft, there might be a scenario where people are like, who the hell did Washington take it? Who is this guy? I've never heard of him before. That is very possible. However,
he could be a Jan Vesely.
I think yes, he absolutely could. But I think he could be like kind of a fun prospect, and I'm very intrigued to see how he turns out.
And we do have differing opinions because one, I will say what I completely agree about is this is the best team for him to go to because who the fuck is going to watch Washington now? Obviously, we'll get to what happened in Washington later down on the podcast, but clearly they traded Bradley Beal. They got Jordan Poole. They got rid of pretty much every hope of ever contending. And they're in rebuild mode. And realistically, if there's ever a team to just be like, dude, if you average 4 points on 25% efficiency, fuck it. You're 18 years old. We're winning 20 games next year anyways. I don't care. So for that, I will commend the Wizards because they are going for a grand slam. They're not going for nothing safe. And honestly, at this point of their rebuild, I agree. You're going to suck anyways and probably get a top 4 pick next year. Yeah, why not hit a home run or a grand slam rather? And if he sucks, you still got a top 5 pick probably next year because you're going to blow anyways. Kind of just double down on that. But listen, I don't know. I watched his YouTube highlights too. He doesn't really give me someone that can create his own shot. He isn't really a shooter. Doesn't have the best handle. But listen, Giannis didn't have any of these things either. And now he's the best player in the world. So listen, like we said, I think Washington was the right team. I think with Jordan Poole, Tyus Jones now, and all these other guys, feed him the ball, get him a couple alley-oops, couple drop and dumps. I think what he should be known for is just being good defensively to start off early in his career. What I will say is clearly people in France don't feed their athletes. I don't know if he's on a baguette diet, him and Wemby, because they're 6'9"
not
plus.
The baguette diet.
They don't put on weight, but hopefully he can get some weight, get a little bit more stockier. But listen, I think for Washington, good pick. Honestly, I think he has like 70% bust potential. Like I said, he can be just a Jan Vesely that the Wizards took 10 years ago or 15 years ago now,
Mhm.
with a top 5 pick. And you're like, who the fuck is that? If you're a casual, you're like, who the fuck is Jan Vesely? Jan Vesely was a dog in college. And then the NBA, he was garbage. So good on the Wizards. I'm going to give
What
this,
I want to know what'd you give? What'd you give the grade?
I'm going to give it a B
Oh, that's
because,
good. It's a
yeah,
good
it's
grade.
good. It's good because, like I said, it's Washington and they can experiment with him. If there was any other team that picked him this early, I probably would have gave him like a C minus. But Washington, they have nothing to lose. So
This is
good
silly
pick.
because I actually gave it a worse grade. I gave him a B minus. But one of the main reasons why I gave him a B minus is they traded with the Pacers, who when they were at
Who
8,
weren't gonna? Yep.
and they traded 2 second-round picks. Like the Pacers weren't taking Bilal at number 7,
Yeah.
so I don't understand why they felt they needed to move up. But with that being said, I'm a little bit higher on him, even though I gave a worse grade than you. But we'll look back. We'll do a 5-year look
Review.
back at this draft, and we'll see how he turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for that to see kind of if he's a bust or not. But kind of segueing into the 8th overall pick, kind of what you were alluding to, the Washington Wizards made this pick, but ended up trading it to Indy, which the Indiana Pacers acquired Jarris Walker out of Houston, the forward. He played like power forward, 3 and 4 in college. I'm really interested to kind of hear your thoughts on this because I think Jarris Walker is a good pick for Indiana because I think Indiana, they're not contending by any means, but obviously they're in the upwards trajectory. You got Miles Turner, you got Tyrese Halliburton, who's a top guard in the league. Like they're going on an upward trajectory. And obviously Jarris Walker isn't, in my opinion, a top stouted prospect in a sense. Like he's going to change this team's trajectory. Like I don't think he's like a Tyler Hero, Donovan Mitchell kind of steal. Like I think he's just a player that's going to know his role, going to be well suited next to Miles Turner on the defensive end, be a good lockdown defender, good rebounder. He's got some pretty solid size, and he's just a pretty tough player. And, Houston is known for producing a lot of tough guys. And I feel like he's the highest pick Houston's had probably in the last 5-6 years from what I remember. So I'm really curious. I think he's going to be really good alongside Tyrese Halliburton since he's a pass first point guard. But I don't think he's going to be anything special.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So, again, I think he's a great athlete. I think he plays both sides of the ball. I think he's a great defender. He's a pretty solid scorer too. I think he's someone who you even kind of mentioned it when you introduced him. Like he can play maybe the 3. He's probably best at a 4. He can play a small ball 5. Like he's a little bit of a chameleon and can guard different spots, can play different spots on the floor. But really, I just think about this with Halliburton. And I think it's like, honestly, like one of the perfect players for Halliburton, like with the pick and rolls. I think he's a great finisher. He's got a nice little jump shot if he goes out to like the elbow or something. So I like the fit. Like you said, I don't think he's not going to be I'll be shocked if he ever makes an all-star game. Like, I don't think he's
right.
like that. But I do think that he could be a player that could make a little noise in his rookie season, and have like some games where it's like, oh shit, did you see that? He had like 20 and 12. Like what in the world?
Right.
I could see that for him, and I like it. I think I gave it a B plus. I see him as almost like, which is someone else that we could talk about here in a little bit, which actually we will probably mention in the next pick. He's kind of, for me, like a little bit of a better John Collins, maybe like a little bit more like versatile. But yeah, I like him. I think it'll be a nice fit in Indiana.
My comparison, I don't know why. I watched him in college, especially during the tournament, and just thought of Terrence Jones. I don't know if you recall Terrence Jones, but he was a power forward. He played in Houston.
I'm a Kentucky fan.
Yeah,
he Kentucky.
He just gives me Terrence Jones vibes. Gritty, strong, good defender, good rebounder, can play small ball 5, can play the 3 and the 4. Terrence Jones ended up developing a corner 3 towards the end of his career. But I feel like that's a good comparison. Like he will play well against or with Tyrese Halliburton. But like you said, I don't think he's going to make any all-star games. But like you said, like drop a 20 and 15 game. And you're like, holy shit, like Indiana's got something there. But I don't
Yeah.
think he's going to be a game changer.
And I do think he's going to like next to Miles Turner, people are going to be nervous to drive into the lane with those two.
Yep.
Which I think,
agree.
Which I think it bodes really well for if Indiana keeps Miles Turner, because I feel like every other week it's like, oh, Pacers are going to trade Miles Turner, but they still haven't. It's been like a rumor for like 4 years now, but I think that's like a really exciting 4-5 pair as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of wrapping this up, I think he has no expectations or like no hype rather in Indiana. I think he could just settle in pretty well, just do his job and have a pretty solid rookie campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So just to confirm, I think I gave it a B. Yeah, I gave it a B. What did you end up giving it?
I gave him a B+.
Okay, perfect. So kind of going to the 9th overall pick, you alluded to it, John Collins being traded to Utah. Utah ended up selecting the 9th overall pick, which they selected Taylor Hendricks out of University of Central Florida, which I will say, as someone that loves Luka Doncic and wants to see him win, I was really, really hoping that he would have fell to the 10th overall pick for Luka, because what I will say about Taylor Hendricks, love the player, like love what he has, hate the pick here for Utah, just because Utah, especially now with John Collins, has a way loaded front court with now Lauri Markkanen, in hopes that obviously he returns from the Finnish army and isn't stuck there for the rest of his life. Walker Kessler, John Collins now. Like Taylor Hendricks is a 3/4, but mostly we saw him in the 4 in college. Great 3-and-D player, great defender, great on-ball defender, freakish athlete. Again, another one. Great wingspan, great hands, can shoot the ball effectively from the outside. I love him as a prospect in a sense that, like I said, him and with Luka would have been amazing. Guard the best player. Pick and fade would have been perfect with Luka. But Utah, I don't know, man. I feel like Utah could have gotten a couple of other players over Taylor Hendricks, especially the fact that they traded for John Collins. I don't know. I think they need like a guard, because thinking about their guards now, it's like Jordan Clarkson is a scorer. Like they don't really have a facilitators, especially since they traded Mike Conley. Because Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler is the future for that team. I don't know if Taylor Hendricks is a great fit there. I could be wrong. I don't know. I just don't like the fit for him in Utah.
Yeah, I hate it. I didn't really like it when it happened. And then I hate it even more now when they traded for John Collins. Like you said, like it makes no sense. They have so many big guys. I just looked at their depth chart, which I know Jordan Clarkson, I think, just like opted in. So Clarkson and Collins Sexton are the only 1, 2, or 3 guys that they have on their roster right now. Like I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't know what what the front office is doing. I love Taylor Hendricks. I think he would have been awesome at the next pick for the Thunder. I think that would have been a really fun pick for them. Like there's so many different scenarios where Taylor Hendricks could have gone and it would have been a great pick. Yeah, I gave it a C+. I like the prospect. I hate the fit, and it doesn't make sense to me.
I'm right there with you at C+, and I just think his talents are going to go wasted unless they do something about John Collins or something. But John Collins has a contract that nobody wants besides Utah, it looks like. So I don't know. I think he might be wasting a potential. I mean, maybe we're wrong and he fits well as a 3, but I don't think it's a good fit for him. And C+, pretty simple.
But like when you look at that team, because like you said, Kessler, which I was going to come on and be like, how many times can we talk about Walker Kessler today? Like Kessler's the starting 5. I'd say, I mean, like is Markkanen a 3 in this team and Collins the 4? Like
I don't know.
I just don't understand where Hendricks fits in. Like you can't go trade for a guy that has a salary hit like John Collins does and not play him. So it's not like Collins is coming off the bench. But Markkanen just had an amazing so I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. Utah is going to be a whole clusterfuck, and I can't wait to see what the fuck they do next season. And listen, they had a good season last year, so
they did.
I don't know. I'm not very high on the pick, but that's pretty it. I think a pick that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, because I think you're going to like this pick. I actually don't. The Oklahoma City Thunder end up acquiring the 10th overall pick from the Dallas Mavericks, and they ended up selecting your boy out of Kentucky, Cason Wallace. So I'll kind of let you take the reins. He's a Kentucky boy. I want to hear your thoughts on
Yeah.
him going to
Of
OKC.
course. Yeah. So again, I love Wallace. I think he's tough. He's gritty. He's a great defender. He's like physical. Like I think what you miss from a lot of these players, I think that we've talked about already, is like they're great athletes, but I don't know if they're like physical as hell on the defensive side. Whereas Wallace is like he kind of reminds me of like a little bit of a poor man, slightly Marcus Smart, even like
I can
he's
see
gonna
that.
he's like gonna piss off people that he's guarded. Like he's just gonna be annoying. He can't shoot the ball all that well. He did get a little bit better at the end of the season. I think he shot like 35 or 36% from three. I just don't understand the fit completely because, I mean, SGA had a huge leap, first team All NBA, another Kentucky guy, and then Josh Giddey. So it's like, I don't know where Wallace fits. I mean, I guess you could have like SGA kind of float to the 2 and Wallace be the 1, Giddey 3, and just a bunch of guys that can facilitate and handle the ball. I don't know. I think I would like him on another team, but I still like the pick. I think he brings a little bit of grit to OKC that they're like a really fun team that's like really kind of flowy, but I think he brings he's going to bring a toughness to him, I think.
Yeah, I think watching Kentucky last season, I think his main strength is just like you said, like that bully ball mentality, someone that's willing to take it to the hole. He can play make. He does have a decent mid-range jump shot. But my thing is, it's like OKC have a plethora of picks for I feel like forever, for like the next generation. Like our grandkids are going to talk about all the picks that OKC still has. But SGA, big leap, someone that needs the ball. Josh Giddey, honestly, a pretty solid leap himself, a playmaker that needs the ball. Jalen Williams, a great rookie season, someone that doesn't necessarily need the ball, but like as he develops, he's going to, want the ball in his hands. I don't know where Cason Wallace fits because he isn't big enough for, like, Giddey's not even big enough for a 3 either. Like, I don't know if they're going to run small ball. Like, I don't know. I don't really like the fit here. The only reason why I think they would do this is if they have high hopes for Cason Wallace and worry that they can't re-sign a Giddey or re-sign a SGA, and that's like the backup plan. But I don't know. I think Cason Wallace, and I never was really high on him in a sense of like superstar potential. Like I think Marcus Smart, obviously a way better Patrick Beverly. Like I just think that kind of role where he's going to guard the best player and just be a menace. Like Tony Allen, like I mentioned Tony Allen earlier, like someone like a Tony Allen.
Tony Allen is getting some love on the podcast.
Yeah, I just, like, I don't know. I kind of see that, like, that dog mentality, and I don't like the fit in OKC, but I think Cason's going to have a good career.
I think the play devil's advocate just for a second is I think when you name those players like a Patrick Beverly and a Marcus Smart, like I think the good thing about them is that they don't need the ball. And I don't think Wallace would need the ball either. Like I think he is someone that could maybe step in and know his role. He could get maybe a little mentor from SGA. And like speaking of SGA, and speaking of Hero that we talked about already tonight and Jamal Murray that we already talked about, like all these guys, all these guards from Kentucky, like they make jumps. They play well.
Yeah.
They play like Maxey in Philly. Like there's so many
quickly with the Knicks.
Quickly, yeah. Like so therefore, I think if there's a Kentucky guard in the draft, like you can't underestimate that because they do translate well
to the
NBA game. So I that's why I'm a little higher on it, and I'm a Kentucky fan, so I'm a little bit of a homer, but I think it could work out. It's like I gave it a B. But I almost would rather give it like a question mark because I'm really intrigued to see how he does fit and what kind of minutes he gets and how those rotations look for him.
Yeah, and I gave it a B- just because, like I said, I don't like the fit. But yeah, I think Cason Wallace is going to have a pretty solid career. Segueing into the next pick, the second pick that Orlando has had in the lottery, something I'm pretty excited to talk about because I think this is going to be a pretty funny segment. The Orlando Magic with the 11th pick ended up selecting Juwan Howard's son out of the University of Michigan, Jet Howard. And I think this one is really funny because like NBA Twitter or just like purists of the game when they saw it were like, what the fuck is going on? And then like you like CJ Billis and like all Mel Kiper, not Mel Kiper, I said Mel Kiper,
Mel
like
Kiper
and the
making
NFL.
Giving in some NBA analysis. Love to see
I meant like Seth Greenberg, but like, you know, all these college guys and like analysis barely had Jet Howard even going in the first round. And the fact that he got the 11th pick is crazy. And I think Orlando ultimately drafted by fit. Like they were looking for like a scorer kind of shooting type player and ended up going Jet Howard. And I don't know, man. Like if you're going by fit, I feel like there's two other players in this lottery that are like way better than him and just way better of a fit in Grady Dick and Jordan Hawkins. Like I just think if you like Jet Howard probably would fit like what Grady Dick and Hawkins would do, like come off ball screen, shoot the three ball, like take, you know, a pull up mid range and whatnot. Like I don't know what Jet Howard provides. I think it was not only a reach, but like kind of a joke. Like I don't know if Juwan Howard has some stock in Orlando and like talk to management, like, hey, put my boy into the lottery. I think it's, I don't know, man. Like maybe I'm wrong, but I hate the pick. Like I almost want to give it a D minus just because I don't think he's going to be good in the A. I don't think he was a good fit, and I just think they it was just a bad pick. I just think Orlando, I would have been okay if they took Derek Lively as a backup big man. Like I think they need a big because Wendell Carter is great, but he's not a defensive anchor. Or they needed a shooter, and I guess they went with Howard, but there was two better picks.
I would have been better if they would have taken Juwan Howard here rather than Jet. And Juwan being 50 years old, I would have rather than do that than take Jet Howard at the number 11 pick. Because at least then I could be like, oh, okay, maybe they were confused, you know. But
right.
It's so bad, and I don't understand. Like, and I think Orlando is like so fun. Like they're young and like they have like a lot of potential. I mean, they just drafted the rookie of the year, you know, like
right.
And he followed up by taking Chet, and he's got a cool name. I'll give him that. But God, what a terrible pick, and especially after that first pick that I did like you said, like Derek Lively would have been a great pick here. Grady Dick, great pick. Jordan Hawkins, great pick. Another guy that we're not even going to talk about tonight, and maybe here in a minute, but Cam Whitmore, who slid all the way down, he would have been a cool fit here. Like, there's so many other guys that would have been so much better, and somehow they spun a wheel and it landed on Jet Howard, and it just left everyone like, what the hell are they doing in Orlando?
Yeah, that was my assumption as well. They just said, you know what, lands on Jet Howard, fuck it. Like I would have been okay if they took Jet Howard later on in the draft and they traded
the second round. Yeah, it would have been great.
Trade the pick, get assets, and go draft them later. I think this was bizarre, and it's almost like drafting Saquon Barkley 2 years ago with the number 1 overall pick in fantasy football bad. So yeah, I D minus for me.
Yeah, I gave it a D, but even like a D minus, it don't matter. You still suck. We probably could have gave it an F and it would have been warranted. Yeah, not great. I mean, he's got NBA bloodline. Maybe people think that's cool. I don't know, but it's just not a good pick. And
I also don't think he was anything special in Michigan anyways. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, he's a fine shooter. He's the one person in this class really I can say is not a good athlete. He's not going to like beat anyone in a foot race. Yeah, I hate the pick, and I figured that we would both agree that this was kind of a joke of a pick.
And speaking of not a joke of a pick, even though that's not what we're talking about, but kind of segueing into something that I absolutely love, the Dallas Mavericks with the 12th pick ended up picking Duke Blue Blood center Derek Lively II. And I'll kind of let you take the floor on this one. But briefly, I just want to say, for them to trade the 10th to the 12th and still get the guy I feel like they wanted to get at the 10th, absolute stellar move. Good for the Mavericks. And I love the pick, but I'll let you kind of talk your thoughts first before I go about mine.
Yeah, first off, before the pick, for them to trade the 10, go back to 12, and get rid of the Bertans contract, which is one of the worst contracts in the NBA. Brilliant move from the jump. And then for them to still get their guy, who I gave I gave this an A. It's my first A since Scoot Henderson at number 3. I think he fits perfect. He's exactly what they need. He's a top tier defender. I hate Duke. I am admittedly a Duke hater. It's in my blood as a Kentucky fan. But God, like I would have loved Lively. Like if Golden State was here, I would have loved if they would have got him. You know, he just protects the paint. He might score 5 points a game, but he doesn't even look to score. He doesn't even care. Like he's such a great player to have on your team, especially as a young kid who he knows his role. He's going to go out there. He's going to protect the paint. He's going to rebound. You know, and for the Mavs, if they end up keeping Kyrie Irving, who's probably going to get guards blowing past him and his terrible defense all the time, finally they have someone that can back him up and, you know, get a block shot here and there. So I love the pick. I thought it was a home run pick. He kind of reminds me of a little bit like a Tyson Chandler, a little bit, some guy who's just going to know his role. What he's going to, and he was a former Mav as well. So I thought I'd throw that in there, but yeah, I love it. I think this from these past like 4 picks that we've been talking, being like, yeah, I really like the prospect, but I don't really understand the fit. Dallas knew what they were doing. This is exactly the kind of player they needed.
Absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement. And I think what's so great is like Dallas has been in the need for a good defensive center. And I think obviously he's a rookie, so we're not going to expect him going out blocking 20 shots a game or whatnot. But like, I think the trajectory of like a Jaren Jackson Jr. defensively has prowess in a sense that he can shot block. He can go out and guard certain guards and certain play styles. And I think it's great. I think him, especially with Luka, is going to be absolutely amazing. Like you said, he's going to score 6 points a game, but he's going to take Dwight Powell's spot, which I'm excited about for Luka, because Dwight Powell was in there for lobs and lobs only. And I think Derek Lively can do exactly what Dwight Powell does, but actually defend the paint. I love the Tyson Chandler comparison. I think he's a little bit skinnier. I think he has a long ways away to build that stockier frame. But like you said, in a sense of knowing when to play defense or like knowing his role, I think is perfect. I think Dallas home run pick. I also gave this an A. I don't think Lively's going to be an all-star by any means, but I think in terms of his role for Luka Doncic and this Mavericks team, absolutely home run what they needed. So nothing more to say.
And I don't know if he'll be an all-star, but I think in 5 years, I think we'll definitely be talking about him for like when we do our defensive player of the year segment of who we think could win it. Like I think absolutely. he's going to be a difference maker. And I think he's going to be someone that's going to be huge for Dallas to try to get back into the playoffs next year.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. So yeah, that's the 12th overall pick. The 13th overall pick was selected by Toronto. And I will say, I'm pretty excited to talk about this just because I think he's going to be the NBA's next big thing in a sense of like Twitter memes, just maybe the personality. The 13th pick the last few years or handful of years have drafted some stellar players with Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Tyler Hero. Will the next come out of Toronto by the name of Grady Dick, Kansas alum? Grady Dick, shooting guard out of Kansas, from Kansas. We'll say really quick, his fit absolutely atrocious. I don't know why he decided to go all red to like for Dorothy in Kansas. It was bad fit. Bad. But Grady Dick in Toronto. Listen, Toronto, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they want to compete. I don't know if they want to tank. They obviously have all-stars in Pascal and possibly Fred VanVleet if he decides to stay, which I don't think he will. OG Anunoby, like, you know, they got players, but Grady Dick, I'm really excited about because number one, he's going to probably have one of the most bought jerseys for like every frat house in America. Like if you think about just a Dick jersey with number 1 as the jersey number would be so hilarious. Like he's literally like the next Tyler Hero. Like everybody had a Tyler Hero Vice City jersey. Everyone's going to have a Grady Dick Toronto jersey. I really like the pick. I think Grady Dick should have went to Orlando here. Great shooter, great scorer, can hit contested mid-ranges, can create his own shot. Is he freakishly athletic? No, but he can get to the rim. He can throw it on a couple of people. I really like the pick. Honestly, this might be a bad comparison, maybe, but he kind of gives me Lauri Markkanen vibes in a sense of like his shot selection, his high shooting arc, and his high shooting form. I really like the pick here for Toronto. I think he's going to be good immediately. I don't think he's like a rookie of the year, but I think a 12, 13 points per game for Grady Dick is very feasible. And I think he's got a future in this league. And he's got a good personality too. He's a jokester. He's a TikTok kind of kid. So I think he'll be really good with not only the fans, but with Toronto.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, I said Jett Howard had a great name. The only reason I didn't say he has the best name in the draft is because Grady Dick exists.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, one of the best shooters in the draft. He shot 42% at Kansas last season, which is, I mean, he was just one of the best shooters in the country. To go to a team in Toronto who was 28th in the NBA in three-point shooting, they addressed the need. I love the pick. Yeah, I think he's going to be good immediately. I mean, he's a shooter, and shooters shoot, and I think he's going to play pretty well. It is going to be interesting to see what Toronto does in terms of, are they going to trade Siakam? Are they going to trade OG? Or are they going to try to compete? I think, by the way, I think this could be a possible option for Portland if Dame wants to stay, maybe a Siakam for Anthony Simons sort of deal. But yeah, like you said, not a freak athlete, but he can still ball. Like he'll still like jump over somebody and kind of put somebody on a poster. And I think if he can get some muscle on him, I think he's going to be like a really, really freaking good player. I don't know if he'll ever make an all-star team, but I think he might be someone that people are like, whoa, Grady Dick got snubbed from the all-star game this season. Like, I think he could be on that kind of fringe. I like the pick. I gave it an A-, which is wild. Like these picks here in the back end of the lottery, I like a lot more than like picks 6 through 9, you know?
I gave it a B+ because I love that they addressed the need and they got the need. I don't want to give Grady Dick too high of a score just because I like his name or just like his confidence. I want to see how he plays and what kind of role he has for this Toronto team, but I love drafting for what they need, and I think it's a great pick. Kind of wrapping up the draft lottery, talking about the last pick of the draft that we have here, the New Orleans Hornets. The New Orleans Pelicans ended up selecting Jordan Hawkins, the guy that just won the national championship for the University of Connecticut, UConn Husky. Jordan Hawkins, how do you like the pick? I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on it, especially for Nola to pick him too.
Yeah, I think the back-to-back in the lottery were the two best shooters, I think, in the draft. I think if Grady Dick's not the best shooter in the class, it's because Jordan Hawkins is in the class. I think he's a great shooter. And he's also someone that just like, you know, I didn't watch UConn a lot during the regular season, but I watched him a lot in the tournament. And he just is like constantly moving. He's just constantly just being very active, even without the ball. And I think that's going to like really frustrate some defenders. Like, just like, dude, can you just sit still for like 10 seconds? You know, he's never going to give someone a break. I think my only knock on him is that although he's a great shooter, he's not great at like getting past people. Like he's not great at like getting to the rim. But I mean, he was a key member, maybe the key member on a championship run team. You know, he scored 20 points, the biggest game, I think, of the tournament when they destroyed Gonzaga. Yeah. He shot lights out. I think he made like 6 threes or so. So like, I love the pick for New Orleans. New Orleans is another one that I'm like, what are they going to do? You know, do you try to entice Zion to like lose 20 pounds and come play ball, or do you try to trade him? I don't know what they're going to do, but I like him. I like him next to like Ingram. I think you're really going to have to like really guard the perimeter with these guys. I mean, even with McCollum too, like I think it's kind of an interesting fit. And I think I'm going to like it in the long run for sure.
Yeah. I think people forget, man, New Orleans was the #1 seed when Zion was healthy in the West for a good stretch of the NBA season. Like New Orleans has the pieces to, I don't know. I feel like the NBA has a lot of parity now that like New Orleans could be a contender. Like they can. They have Ingram, they have McCollum, they have Zion, they have Valanciunas.
When Zion's on the court, when Zion's healthy and on the court, he looks like he's a top 10 player in the NBA. He just does. Yeah. And I don't like Zion. I'm not not a Duke guy. But when he's on there, he overpowers everyone. Like if he gets on the court, New Orleans is going to be a contender.
Yeah, and like I said, Trey Murphy, who they drafted, is a great athletic shooter. Herb Jones is a great defender. Now you got Jordan Hawkins, who my comparison, and I'm not taking this out of Jay Billis because I see it too, is kind of Ray Allen. Went to the same college, same kind of play style. Ray Allen, obviously, very early on in his career was a lot more athletic with Seattle and Milwaukee. But I think Jordan Hawkins has that same play style in a sense that coming off a pin down screen, we'll go off a screen, catch and shoot, we'll hit a contested three in someone's face. Like he has that play style, and I think that fits perfect for Brandon Ingram, for Zion Williamson, for CJ McCollum, who can create their own shot and just kick out. Jordan Hawkins is right there. Boom, splash. I love the pick. I'm giving it a B plus just because I don't think Jordan Hawkins is going to be a star in this league. But I think he's going to be a good role player for the Pelicans if they decide to contend and not trade Zion Williamson, who has been recently deciding to play with porn stars instead of play basketball.
Sometimes you gotta play the field a little bit. But
yeah,
I like the comparison. I kind of see him just because Ray Allen's like the second or third best shooter in the history of the game. I would say he's like more like a Malik Beasley, maybe.
Okay,
like someone
I can see that.
Like you said, like he could start in the league. I don't think if he's starting for your team, I don't think you're a contender. So I think he's a great guy off the bench. He's going to knock down some threes. He's going to, I think if he's in the right fit, I think he'll be solid. I gave it a B plus just because I do think the upside is there for him. I think, I think it addressed a little bit of a need. I don't know. The Pelicans, like you said, they're like pretty good. So I don't really know what they needed other than to just like fill the roster and, give them some depth.
Right. All right. So that's kind of everything in terms of the NBA draft, in terms of discussing the top 14 lottery picks. Just to kind of do quick fire, just hearing your thoughts. Biggest winner out of the 14 or out of the lottery?
Houston. Houston's the biggest winner for me. They get the better Thompson, as you said. And then somehow they get Cam Whitmore at like 23 or whatever they got him at, which everyone was projecting him in the top 10. He was a really solid player in college. I don't understand. Like I was begging Golden State to take him, and of course they passed up for him from somebody from Santa Clara or whatever. But yeah, I think Houston. Other than the Spurs, which are like the obvious pick, who I think they won the lottery. That was like their night of winning. I think it was a really good night for Houston.
My biggest winner, Portland. They get Scoot Henderson. They get the player of the future if they decide to trade Dame. I think it's a home run pick to get someone like Scoot at the number 3 overall pick. So kind of on the flip side, who is your biggest loser of the night?
Yeah, I think I could go a couple ways here. I am going to go with a funny pick, which you already kind of mentioned, is Grady Dick's, stylist. I think is a big loser tonight. Whoever talked him into wearing that. But honestly, I'm going to go with the Jazz. I think there were a lot of really good players, a lot of good guards, a lot of good shooters that could have fit like really cool with Laurie and kind of what they're doing, but they went with another big guy. So I'm going to say the Jazz are the biggest losers.
And not to kind of beat a dead horse, I'll go a little opposite. I'm going to go with Orlando. Love the Anthony Black pick. Hate the Jet Howard pick, especially when there's so many better shooters. There's just so many like other big men that they could have picked or traded the pick away for assets. I don't know. Stupid move. But yeah. And then kind of wrapping off the draft, out of everything that you've seen so far from the lottery picks that we discussed, who's your early rookie of the year prediction?
All right. So I have a few names written down here. Okay. So obviously I feel like everyone's going to be putting probably money on Victor and Scoot. So I have them written down just so if one of them wins it, I don't look like an idiot for not saying Victor and Scoot, whatever. However, my two kind of dark horse picks, one, I've already said him quite a few times, Cam Whitmore. I think he has a huge chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to be able to play immediately in Houston because they have a lot of guards. They have a lot of big men. He fits perfectly right in the middle of like that 3 spot. Great athleticism. And I think he's really like, I know everyone says like, oh, they're going to set out to prove everybody wrong. I really think he is. Like, I think he was maybe a little embarrassed on draft night. And I think he's got a huge chip on his shoulder. And then my even maybe bigger dark horse, I don't know if maybe y'all forgot about him. Maybe you have. But he hasn't played in a little bit, and it's a man by the name of Chet Holmgren and OKC. If I'm putting money in Vegas, I'm putting it on him. I loved him in college. I loved him coming out of college. I thought it was an awesome fit in OKC. And now we actually get to see him play. So that's another rookie of the year candidate.
I don't want to kind of just agree the entire time, so I won't pick Chet Holmgren. I was going to be a sneaky guy and be like, you forgot.
Nope.
But yeah, Chet Holmgren was one of my picks. I think in terms of Cam Whitmore, he does have a chip on his shoulder, literally because he fails his physical, which is why he fell so hard, fell so down on the draft. But I like Cam. He was number 4 on Jay Billis's top list, and he fell all the way to whatever 23 or what not. My rookie of the year prediction, obviously Scoot Henderson, like I said earlier, whatever, Wembenyama, like you said. But if I had to give a fun one that I really, really like, I'm actually going to go with Anthony Black. I think he's got a lot of talent around him. And if Wembenyama or like Scoot Henderson doesn't get opportunity because of Dame, like I think Anthony Black can cultivate a lot of stats to rise to the top. But one really, 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 really far take is actually the Lakers guy that they picked at 17, Jalen Hood Scafano or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he's going to lead the Lakers to anything, but like there's talks of LeBron or AD possibly leaving if Reeves doesn't stay somehow. And that team is his. He's got a lot of talent, and he was hooping in Indiana. So if I had to make a very dark horse pick, it'd be him. So that just kind of wraps up everything that we have in terms of the draft breakdown. It was a great draft breakdown, but obviously there's a lot that's happened since the draft that I'm really excited to talk about. And I'm just going to say it how it is. It's been a trade frenzy in a sense with a lot of superstars kind of getting shipped out. There's been some minor trade deals in a sense of like role players like a John Collins to Utah that we already alluded to, but we don't really need to touch much up on that. The first big trade that really happened that I really want to talk about is the Boston Celtics making probably the move that I don't think anyone expected, and that's acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. But the second time, because the first time it ended up failing because of, it didn't end up working out with Malcolm Brogdon and whatnot. But the Boston Celtics acquire Kristaps Porzingis, my very own former Knick, and ended up trading the heart and soul of Boston, Marcus Smart, to Memphis, if that's how Bostonians would say that.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but we got it.
The Marcus Smart was pretty.
That was perfect.
It was pretty good. Yeah. I kind of want you to take it away. What's your thoughts on the trade? Do you like this for Boston? Do you like this for Memphis? Because obviously Tyus Jones gets traded to, I believe, Washington in this deal as well. So a lot of moving pieces, but obviously the headliner is Porzingis to Boston, Smart to Memphis.
Yeah, so I am still a Porzingis believer. He's coming off his
best season,
or if not his best season in his career. I think he's just proven that if he can stay healthy, he could still play ball. Like he's just a fundamental, solid big man. I think when you're talking about big men in the league behind, of course, like Embiid and Joker, like Porzingis isn't too far down the list. So I think he's going to serve well in Boston. Now, trading Marcus Smart, there was clearly 2 years ago he won Defensive Player of the Year. Tough, gritty, tough. There was a drop off from this season. I think absolutely. You kind of saw that even in the playoffs. And I don't know how many times. Again, I listened to a lot of Bill Simmons. I don't know how many times there's been big games, and it's like the final 10 seconds. And Marcus Smart has the ball in his hands and he's shooting up a three instead of Brown or Tatum. Like it happens so often. So I like it for Boston. The team I really don't like it for is Memphis because I think I'd rather have Tyus Jones, if I'm being honest. Marcus Smart's fine. Like I just think Marcus Smart is who he is, and I think he's very limited on what he can do on the offensive side of the ball. So, I don't love it for Memphis. I like it for Washington. I really like it for Boston. I think it was a good move.
Yeah, I think Kristaps Porzingis is someone that I've watched a lot in my life because before Luka Doncic, I was a Porzingis stan just because European basketball player, tall, long, lengthy, my build. I used to call myself Lefty Porzingis, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But he's coming off the best season of his career. I mean, in Washington, he absolutely killed it. Shot it efficient from three. Played the best defensive season he's had in his career. Great shot blocker. He was great on the perimeter. And I think Washington allowed him to just play free, no expectations. You don't have the expectations of New York. You don't have the expectations of playing for Mark Cuban alongside Luka Doncic. Like, you get to do whatever you want. And he balled out. You have Bradley Beal, Kuzma there. They had 3 guys average 20 points per game. Porzingis was one of them. So I don't think he has problems playing with stars. I just think Luka kind of hindered him, and like Rick Carlisle made him into a spot-up shooter, which he can be, but that's not his game. I think him in Boston as the third star is picture perfect. I do have some questions because what do you do with Al Horford? Do you start Porzingis with Al Horford? Do you start Time Lord with Porzingis? Like, I don't know what happens there. Marcus Smart, I think you pointed out perfectly. I think there was kind of a clash in Boston. Like, Marcus Smart felt entitled to shoot the big game shots when you have Jason Tatum, a top 5 player in the league, and Jaylen Brown, an arguable top 10, if not top 15 player in this league. Like, why are you shooting the ball? And I think Brad Stevens just realized that, listen, like, you know, like you said, Marcus Smart had a big drop-off. He won Defensive Player of the Year, which was already a big debate whether or not he deserved it or not, and then fell off. Like, honestly, like you said, I hate this for Memphis. Like, I saw a take by some guy on TikTok, and to a casual, it would be a stupid take, but I think he was pretty spot on. Like, Marcus Smart is just like a 5% better Dillon Brooks. Like, you get rid of Dillon Brooks because, you know, whatever. Like, but Dillon Brooks can defend. He brought attitude. He isn't a good scorer. He's a shot chucker. And that's what Marcus Smart is, but smaller. Like, he's a shot chucker. I guess he's a better facilitator. He's a little bit smaller. And then, like, defensively, he's maybe a little bit better than Dillon Brooks. Like,
maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, like, if that. So, I don't know. Tyus Jones was one of the best backups, if not the best backup point guard in the league. And Memphis has shown to do well without Ja anyways. And now that Ja is gone for 25 games, you're going to have Marcus Smart lead the offense. I don't know.
Right.
I'm curious to see
Marcus Smart run the offense with Jaren Jackson, who's a great defender as well, but again, not a great scorer. Like, I mean, they're going to have Desmond Bane score 35 points a game for them to be relevant in those first 20, 25 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think Marcus Smart is going to have some clash within Memphis. Like, is he going to take the big shot at the end? I don't know. I like the fact that Marcus Smart has so much playoff experience to help this young Memphis team. I think it's more of a tutoring thing or like a mentoring thing. But in terms of like the best move for Memphis, but Memphis gave up 2 first-round picks also. Like, and they gave up a lot for Marcus Smart. Like, Boston also got 2 first-round picks and Porzingis. Absolute steal for Boston. Great deal for Boston. And I don't know. We say it every year, and I hate Boston, but with Porzingis, if he plays well, they're the team to beat, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to see how it fits. I think it's kind of a weird fit, but I think it's going to work. I don't know. And it's also just to mention too, like Porzingis, he played 65 games this season. It's the first time he's done that since his second season. And I think also because Porzingis came in the league, he got booed by y'all, and then he was immediately like a stud. I think people like think he's a lot older than he is. He's only 27 years old. Like, he's still like right in his prime. So, I like the trade for Boston. I think it was a good deal. I feel like it was like a Danny Ainge type of deal. So I'm happy to see Brad Stevens be willing to pull a trigger on something like that.
I'll always love you, Tingus Bingus. That's what they called him on draft night. That was so iconic. But yeah, I love the move for Boston. Another move that I think might be a little controversial, I don't know if we have the same opinions on this, is I would say the biggest blockbuster of the deadline, or not the deadline rather, but the offseason so far, is my boy, Gator Nation, Chomp Chomp, Bradley Beal going from Washington, waiving his trade clause, to Phoenix to pair up with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. And at first, a lot of people were like, dude, what the fuck? Washington literally gave up pennies to get, or like they acquired pennies to give up Bradley Beal. But after the deal for Chris Paul going to Washington, it came out that they gave up like 4 first-round picks and whatever. So Washington got a haul for Bradley Beal. And I think Bradley Beal going to Phoenix, going to a contender, finally, after all these years of him being like, I'm loyal to Washington, I'm going to bring a chip to Washington. Like, get the fuck out of here. I have a signed hat for Bradley Beal. I met Bradley Beal. Love my guy, Bradley Beal. Talented scorer, but he needed to get out of Washington, so I'm happy that he did. What's your take on Phoenix? Do you think Phoenix got a lot better with Bradley Beal, or no?
So first off, as far as the first round picks, they're only swaps. So the only time they would ever go into effect is if Washington had a better record than Phoenix in that draft, and they swapped with them, which is never going to be the case because Washington is tearing it all down. They're going to be garbage for a while. I do not like this deal for Phoenix. If they would have made this deal last season, which by the way, Washington should have made this deal last season because they should have been tanking for Wemby. I don't know why you tank the season after you have Wemby and Scoot Henry, whatever. But if you would have made this trade then, and you have Booker, you got Beal, you got Bridges, you got Cam Johnson, you got Ayton, you have guys who can score the ball and guys who can defend. I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know who's going to guard anyone on that team. and I know that Beal led the league in scoring a few seasons ago. Booker, a terrific scorer. KD, one MVP. I get it. They can score the ball, but I don't know who's gonna fit. And then you're also gonna you throw Ayton in the mix, which he may get dealt. Who knows? But is he gonna be happy? Because he's never seen the ball with these. Yeah. He's never seen it. So I don't know. I think when you look at it on paper, like you said, you're giving up Chris Paul. You're giving up Landry Shamet. You're giving up some second round pick. It really on paper, it's God, Suns got a great deal for Beal. Heck yeah. But I don't know how it's going to translate to the court. I don't know if I see it for him.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm more so grading the goodness of this deal because what do you really give up? A 38-year-old Chris Paul and Landry Shamet for a top 10, 15 player in the league, a top 3 shooting guard. The Suns literally have 2 of the top 4 shooting guards in the league right now. And I think one thing that people don't realize is, yes, they are all talented scorers, but the last couple of years, Devin Booker has ascended as a playmaker. Bradley Beal in Washington the last few years has ascended as a playmaker. Kevin Durant can now dish the ball. Do I think Ayton is obviously going to get his touches? Yes, but is he going to be happy about it? No. I just think with what they gave up for Bradley Beal, it's an absolute must-do. Do I think they're the favorites to win the chip? No, because they need rotational pieces anyways. But I love the pick. I love Bradley Beal. I genuinely think they all are going to fit well with each other. I don't think there's going to be any ego clashes or anything of that nature. I think they're both realize that that's Devin Booker's team and they'll just play to Devin. They'll be Devin Booker's Robins in a sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I would love to see it because I like Beal. He was someone who, even though he's a Gator, I always kind of rooted for. I like his game. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, of course, but that also could be Washington wanting to shut him down because they wanted to lose games. I get that. It's kind of like the Dame Lillard effect in Portland, but I don't know because you say why wouldn't you do that deal? It's because now you have a huge Beal contract, you have a huge Booker contract, you have a huge you don't have money to fill out those rotational guys. Unless players will come and play with them because they think it's a chance for a ring and they'll take a much lower contract than they normally would. That's the only way you're going to fill out the team with people who would actually play for other teams. I don't know. But of course now, and the news came out today or whatever yesterday that Kyrie Irving's taking a of course. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I think they forget that there's one basketball that can be held at a time on the court, and you add Kyrie into it, there's literally no one going to be guarding anyone. It's going to be madness.
How much help does Kevin Durant need? No, dude, it's actually insane how many super teams Kevin Durant's been a part of. And listen, I will say I used to be the biggest Kevin Durant hater, but ever since he went to Brooklyn and I just watch him live, the dude is special. And I really want him to win another ring just because he is a special talent. And like you said, if Kyrie somehow goes to Phoenix, I don't know what the fuck is going to happen. That team is literally going to be a soap opera. It's actually going to be jokes.
Yeah, so, if I know the NFL has Hard Knocks. If Kyrie goes to Phoenix, I need a Hard Knocks NBA version on HBO immediately.
Live, an Instagram live of every locker room, just everything. That would be hilarious. But kind of going back to the Bradley Beal, I think Bradley Beal is a great catch and shoot player. He's great off the ball. Kevin Durant is great off the ball. Devin Booker is great off the ball. That's why I think it works. Like, I don't think it's not going to work. It's just, is it going to win a championship? I don't know, because they need defenders. And right now they don't have any. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I think a great way to segue into the next trade is involving your team with Chris Paul, who went to Phoenix, to Washington. Oh my God, ends up packing his bags from probably the worst team in the league to arguably one of the contenders in Golden State. Chris Paul, I think this is a big wow, because I know we texted about it and we had varying opinions. Yeah. I was like, dude, Washington fleeced Golden State. They got Jordan Poole, a young player that has a lot of talent in this league, and all they gave up was a 38-year-old fucking bum, essentially, in Chris Paul. Chris Paul isn't a bum, but like, Chris Paul is not special, in my opinion. So I want you to kind of take this away, because I think we have varying opinions on the opposite side.
Well, we certainly do. I think, well, first off, like, I don't know if I'll ever forget me being in a meeting my first week on the job, and I just get an OMG text, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I have it on my Apple Watch, and you're like, Chris Paul to Golden State. I'm like, what? I literally had to pull my phone out in the meeting, because I was like, what the hell's going on? Priorities, of course. But I think, because you say like Washington fleeced them, I think it was a good trade for both sides. I think with Golden State having the Jordan Poole, Draymond Green issue from before the season, they came out and said, and it could have been like some facade that they said just to cover up that they weren't that good in the postseason, but they said that like that affected the team all season long, and it was like this weird gray cloud above the team the whole time. So like, how do you expect Draymond to come back if you still have Poole? Like, it's still going to be weird. And then, of course, you see when Poole got traded, he unfollowed Draymond on Instagram like 3 minutes after he got traded. Like, obviously, there's bad beef there. So I think Jordan Poole had to go if you want to bring Draymond back. I think he's a great change of scenery guy. Like, we saw flashes of Poole being a really good shooter. But, of course, we also saw in the postseason him being a really bad shooter. And I know that we discussed it, and you said – I think he just had a bad postseason, and maybe he did. Maybe he's had a really bad stretch of 3 or 4 weeks, and that is what it is. But I'm hoping he does well in Washington. From the flip side, you bring in Chris Paul, 38-year-old bum, as you like to say. He's still a guy who has arguably the highest basketball IQ in the NBA. So you're trading Jordan Poole's basketball IQ, who shot like a 35-footer with 8 seconds left on the clock. It's insane.
One of the worst.
Yeah, it's insane the jump that you're making as far as IQ goes. And you put him with Curry, you put him with Clay, you might put him with Draymond. Like, it's insane. Like, they're as long as they come together in chemistry, I think it'll be insane. I think Chris Paul, he played 32 minutes a game last season. He's 37 years old for a team, Phoenix, who was like in contention to maybe win it all, you know. He still averaged 14 and 9. Like, he's not like dog shit, you know, like he's actually like, he still can facilitate. I think the thing is he's older and he's gonna wear down easily, which is why I think Golden State is perfect for him. You know, like he doesn't have to carry the team. Like, he can play 15 minutes a night for the first 5 months of the season. And then the playoffs, we can get, you know, Chris Paul. You know, I think it makes just so much sense for both teams. I think as long as the chemistry's there, because I know Chris Paul's had some weird interactions with the Warriors in his career, especially at Houston and then at Phoenix. So I think if they can come together, and especially if they re-sign Draymond and Chris Paul get along, then I think it's going to be a great trade for both teams.
What I will say is I agree with the Chris Paul take that him and Golden State is perfect. I think him as the point guard, Steph Curry can do his like original like thing that he grew up playing as a shooting guard, being a 2 guard, being a scorer away from the ball, not having to worry about facilitating, get everybody involved. He's going to make Clay better. He's just going to make everyone around him better, and he doesn't have to do much. You're not expecting Chris Paul to play 40 minutes a game, expecting to be the point guard of this team. Steph Curry is going to have such a great season next year because of Chris Paul, if Chris Paul's healthy. I firmly do believe that. My only thing is, You trade your future in Jordan Poole, who, a lot of people, and like I told you, like, gave Jordan Poole so much shit. I have a coworker I work, huge Warriors fan. He's like, Jordan Poole's garbage. Get him out of there. He sucks. He blows. He's a liability on defense. He can't play in the postseason. He can't be counted on. And I'm like, are we forgetting, like, Jordan Poole just won an NBA championship the year before, and he was considered the third splash bro. Like, people were really saying Jordan Poole is the next guy after Steph Curry. And then after one postseason run, people just were like, oh, whatever. Like, Steph Curry went down, and Jordan Poole just had an amazing leap as a starter. Like, if you look at his numbers as a starter compared to a role player, drastically different. The guy averages like 23 points as a starter and like 16 points off the bench. Like, Jordan Poole averaged 20 points last season. Like, yes, he had a bad postseason, but so did the Warriors. Like, the Warriors didn't do good. Like, everybody else kind of struggled around him as well. So you trade someone who probably has 10 to 15 years left in the league for a Chris Paul with a max, in my opinion, like max 2 years left to be effective, I think is a bad move. But I think for the window that the Warriors are looking towards, I will say Chris Paul helps the Warriors win a championship now than Jordan Poole does. But I think you're selling your future for another ring, which is maybe what they want.
That's the thing. I think Golden State was trying this really interesting, little project of, can we win titles now while also building the next generation? They had a top 3 pick, and they drafted James Wiseman, which right from the beginning really set them back because James Wiseman did not end up being the player that they wanted to be. Then they have 2 lottery picks. They drafted Kuminga and Moody. And they've played here and there, but they haven't really made jumps either. So it's like, okay, we had an opportunity here with a few lottery picks, and they were misses. They just were. Right. Like, maybe Kuminga will be good, maybe Moody will be good, but at this point they're misses. And so are we really committed to paying Jordan Poole $128 million over the next 4 years when we're not sure what that looks like? We're not sure once Curry hangs it up and Clay I don't think Poole is a guy that can be your best player and you'd be a contender. I don't think he'll ever be that guy. Yeah. So you're paying, like, in like his 4th year of his deal, he'd be getting paid $35 million. Like, I think that was like the biggest thing about this all. I think a lot of it did have to do with like the Draymond issues, but I think a big thing was like they didn't want to pay all that money to Poole. And I think there was a lot of head scratching when they extended him, a year early. Yeah, it's like, okay, why don't we just wait until the year later and then like see how he does? I think it was a little premature extension, but I think it boils down to, like, I think Steph Curry said it best the other day, I think it was yesterday, when he said every team Chris Paul gets on gets better. And we saw it with OKC. We saw it with Phoenix. Like, Phoenix missed the playoffs for like 11 straight seasons before he got there.
They went to the finals.
Yeah, so like, he makes your team better. And when you have a chance to get a player who has that consistent, run, especially when you're giving up Jordan Poole, who has been so inconsistent, I'm willing to be open-minded about it, and I'm looking forward to it.
And I do want to give Chris Paul his flowers there. He is a winner in the sense that he does make everyone better. Obviously with New Orleans originally, goes to Los Angeles. They become a contender every single year. Then he goes to OKC. OKC makes the playoffs. Then he goes to
with Houston. No one. Like, everyone thought OKC was going to be one of the worst 3 teams in the league.
Yep. And he pushed them there. I think they were the 8th seed, in the bubble and everything. Then he goes to Houston. Houston is a contender for like 2 to 3 years. They probably could have won a chip if they didn't crumble a couple of times or Chris Paul didn't get hurt.
And if he didn't get hurt. Yeah. If he didn't get hurt, they'd probably beat Golden State, and they'd probably go on to win a championship.
Right. So I agree. I will say Jordan Poole to Washington is amazing for Washington. Like I said, they have no future in a sense that nothing they're going to do in the next 3 years or 4 years is going to be relevant. But Jordan Poole might be an all-star in the East within, whether it's next year or the year after. He's going to put up so many empty stats. He might fuck around and average 30. Like, who else is going to shoot the ball there? Like, he might fuck around and average 30.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if he has that in him, but I do think he'll have a lot of empty stats. I agree with that.
So I think it's a good fit for him. DC, DMV area, not a lot of expectations. Just go ball out and shoot 35-footers that mean nothing. So, I think it works out for both teams in a sense that they got what they wanted. Poole for Washington as in the future, and Chris Paul helping a contender. I just think the Warriors could have got so much more for Jordan Poole if you went to another trade or like traded with another franchise. But hey, they wanted Chris Paul. He can help them win now. And kind of to wrap up the podcast is something that's relevant, honestly, today. And that's in regards to the beard, James Harden opting into his contract with the Sixers, but telling them that, hey, I'm going to help you out and opt into this contract, and you trade me to get something out of me than me just leaving, going elsewhere. So there's rumors saying that my New York Knicks are one of the teams in contention for him, as well as the Clippers. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on James Harden. Where is he going? Was this the right move for James Harden? Because I kind of have varying opinions on him opting in. And where do you think he's going to go?
Yeah, I think we alluded to something earlier, just for a split moment. You mentioned it, and I wanted to wait because I think this plays so much into it. Is when we were talking about Porzingis, and you said he got traded for the second time to Boston because it didn't happen the first time, because that was when the Clippers were involved, and the Clippers were supposed to get Brogdon in that deal. And I think I don't report any NBA officials for any tampering or anything, but I think the Clippers had a little nudge. Hey, like, Harden wants to come to y'all. Don't give up your assets, because we need you to trade the assets to us so that you can get Harden. So therefore, I think that's why the Clippers backed out. I think they had a little intel maybe. And so I do think he'll end up in LA. And I think it'll be a good fit. However, it all hinges if is Kawhi and Paul George healthy. Like, if they're not healthy, it's all moot. They're going to be terrible. But yeah, I think he's going to end up in LA. I think it's maybe a little bit better for him to get out of Philly. I think it's a good move to opt in, so Philly gets some assets. Yeah, I think he'll be a Clipper probably in the next week or so.
You know, I think that's a great shout, because I didn't see it that way. I didn't think that the reason why they backed out of Brogdon was because, like, hey, like, James Harden, we might have a run at James Harden. I'm a little confused on James Harden's whole ride with the Sixers, because I think the Sixers have everything they need to be a contender. You got Max, you got Tobias Harris, you got Joel Embiid, who just won the MVP, you got James Harden, who's still pretty good. You have a lot of pieces. Like, they have a great bench. Like, you want to win, so why are you leaving? Like, I don't understand. And going to the Clippers, which is literally the biggest hit or miss that he can do out of any team. Like you said, Kawhi and Paul George are healthy. That's like a 30%, and that's even being like nice. Kawhi's always injured. Paul George is always injured. They do load management in the Clippers. Like, I don't know what James Harden is expecting to happen out of there. And they might re-sign Westbrook as well. Like, I don't know. That's a lot to go on. Like, I think when healthy, do I think they're a top contender with, like, Denver? No. I think NBA is starting, or basketball starting to get back into that one great player, one good player, and a bunch of role players taking over the league. Because look with Milwaukee, Giannis was the great player. Middleton was a good player. Drew was a good player, and a lot of good role players. Same thing with Denver. Like, I don't know if the superstars or, like, the big threes are really taking over anymore. So with James Harden doing that, I just think it's the biggest risk. Do I want him to come to the Knicks? I don't think so. Like, I would love him on the Knicks, but Jalen Brunson, that's his team. Like, I think the Knicks need a forward. Like, fuck Julius Randle. Like, maybe Paul George to the Knicks. Who knows? My buddy, my group chat, like my friend group chat, like with all my New York Knicks homers, were saying like Harden to the Clippers, Paul George to the Knicks, and then the Knicks and the Clippers will give all the assets to the Sixers, which could be a possibility, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think the Clippers are a better fit for him than the Knicks, but if you're Harden, you're just literally closing your eyes and trying to swing at a 99-mile-an-hour fastball in hopes that you actually connect for a home run. That's how I view it.
Yeah, I don't love it for the Knicks, simply because I think if the Knicks make the deal, I think they would have to give up RJ Barrett, and I personally wouldn't want them to give him up. I think he really showed some strides, especially like in the postseason a little bit there in that Cleveland series and such. So, yeah, I don't know. It's tough because you don't, like you said, you have no idea what you're going to get from Kawhi. When Kawhi's healthy, I mean, I think when we went to the game, you know, in LA, like Kawhi balled. Like when Kawhi's healthy, the dude is still a top 10 player in the league. I don't care how old he is, but the problem is he's just not on the court very often. So, it's impossible to know what inside Kawhi's head, right? I mean, it's impossible. Right. So, I think it'll be interesting. I think if he goes there and it's like Westbrook, Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, and like Zubac, I think it'll be really interesting. It's like a team that would have scored like 160 points back in like 2013.
Right.
But I think it makes sense for the Clippers. I think they're at like a bit of a crossroads. They're opening up a new arena. They want the star players there, and I think it makes sense for them to, you know, trade Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, I don't even know,
BJ Boston
or somebody, like some young guys, and get Harden. And I mean, we saw again strides of Harden being really good in the postseason, and there were some games where he was really bad. But when you have players like a Kawhi or Paul George that can fill in on those nights, it could work out for him. So I think it makes the most sense for him. Now, I do agree, like, why he wants to get off Philly. Maybe he wants to go to like a bigger market, like in New York or in LA, because Philly does have a dang good team. I mean, I think were they the 1 seed, or
I think they were the 3, but they went to game 7. They were to game 7 with Boston, so it's like
and you have the defending MVP. You have an up and coming Maxey. You have a pretty underrated and overpaid Tobias Harris.
Right.
Yeah, so like I don't know why he wants out of Philly so bad, but I think if he gets out of Philly, I think the Clippers is the next best spot for him.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point with the new arena and everything. I just think his best opportunity to win a championship is with Philly personally. But he also had rumblings of wanting to go to Houston, like signing there. So I don't fucking know what it is with James Harden. Yeah. He's on a league of his own, but I'm really curious to see, because this is just the start of the trade frenzy in the offseason. And I can't wait when we do a podcast about it at the start of the regular season, just what the fuck is going to go on. So that kind of wraps up episode 15 of the RizPod, where we kind of just broke down the NBA trade that happened in the offseason, talked about the NBA draft. It was a pretty loaded one and a really good one. A lot of good content that we talked about. Mitch, any kind of final thoughts that you have for this episode, for the RizPod audience?
Yeah, I'm excited for the NBA frenzy to start here in a couple of days. I think it's going to be exciting. The free agency class isn't like stacked by no means, but like there's some interesting pieces that can move around. Also, of course, thanks for having me back. I think it's my 3rd time, so I've been on 20% of the RizPod episodes, which is also the same as like Jordan Poole's shooting percentage in the postseason. So he's the guy that you thought Washington got that was so good. But yeah, always love coming on here and talking hoops with you.
Absolutely, dude. I can't wait to keep going. Thank you to everybody that keeps watching and listening. This is episode 15 of the RizPod with your boy, the man, the myth, the legend himself, RizGOD, Riz God, baby, and Mitchell Hammond. And we're signing out. Bye, guys.
Later.